I am Christine Chalk. I'm a supervisor at the airport here in Las Vegas at McCarran. Every company, every airline has meetings and drills. They talk about active shooter.
We experienced an active shooter situation approximately 10:08 p.m. tonight.
From the hospitals, we're hearing that there are at least 20 casualties that have been brought in, and that number is apparently growing.
It's all in my phone. One of the guys wrote to me, he said, I know you're there, just run and get out.
I'm Michael Glockner. I'm the special event lead for Community Ambulance. There's just one person after another telling me where they've been shot. So I started with what I needed to do, control the bleeding. At one point, the tent was so full. I remember looking out and I couldn't tell where my crew were. It was just so many bodies, and that will stay with me.
I am a medical professional. I work here in Las Vegas and am a Las Vegas native. On 1 of October, I was currently working my shift here at the hospital.
I'll take him to the hospital.
I got multiple gunshots right here.
Okay, let's get him in the truck. I'll take him to the hospital.
Let's go.
Do we have any other wounded people you take?
An ambulance wasn't the first thing to arrive. It was a pickup truck full of people, and with those people were bodies. And first thing you do is jump in and help pull them out.
We have well in the excess of 100 plus injured and excess of 20 plus that have died.
We're pulling them, marking them depending upon their injuries, where they were hit. They were marked with an eye on the forehead, indicating that they needed immediate care. Ones that you could tell had already expired or had, and I hate to say, no hope. Those patients were marked with a B on their forehead for black, meaning comfort measures, morphine, oxygen.
Our county fire department is estimating the injuries to be well over 400 and the deaths associated with this event to be over 50.
It was for sure a war zone that night.
This level of violence is now exposing a whole nation at large, not just in someone's little neighborhood, not just in the Comptons, not just in South Phoenix or whatnot. This is now, everybody is exposed to it.
Thousands of people are impacted. First, thousands were at the concert. Then you have thousands of people who were first responders and hospital workers. Then you have all of the families who were watching and being devastated by the things that were being seen on TV.
The ripple effects of this kind of tragedy are probably impossible to calculate.
I live here in Las Vegas, and it was terrible about the shooting. I would be worried about my friends because they could die if they got shot.
I would now like to introduce our wonderful mayor, Mayor Carolyn Goodman of the city of Las Vegas.
So pleased to see you all here and know that our city has a broken heart. Everybody in this community has been so touched by the loss of these lives.
This is the most unprecedented expression of violence in the history of our country.
At least 58 people now dead, more than 500 people wounded in a horrific shooting on the Las Vegas Strip. It's the deadliest mass shooting in modern United States history.
We thank our first responders, our phenomenal law enforcement, and those who responded so quickly to saving lives, even though we lost so many.
Man-made violence, human-to-human violence, unprovoked violence, terrifies us like nothing else does.
And we know that the lives of so many families, friends, and all of us who call Las Vegas home are forever different.
It was a total shock, and those shock waves are going to still reverberate for years.
Just like last week, we had to jump under our desk and cover our heads and barricade the door because there's a man outside with the gun. And I was thinking about the Mandalay Bay shooting. Me and my friends talk about if there was an active shooter at our school, and if we got shot, what would our friends do about it?
It has bonded us so tightly as one person, one group, one passion, one heartbeat.
Before what happened, the tragedy we had on 1 October, I mean, you'd ask people where they're from, and they're from Chicago, Miami, or Pittsburgh, or New York, or Milwaukee, and now you say where you're from Las Vegas. Las Vegas is our home. This brought us together.
Having gone through many different things in my life, and I've seen a lot of violence, and to know that not only recovery is possible, but that actually you end up with a message.
Because that violent act happened here, Vegas becomes the conduit for helping the nation understand how to heal from violence like this.
For those of us that live here in Las Vegas and this is our home, we cannot allow what one man did on one day, one evil act, to determine how we move forward in the next 5 to 10 years. We make that determination.
The injuries I sustained were the gunshot wound that came in right below my ear. It entered at my neck. This is the bullet that they were able to take out. The position of the bullet ended up ½ inch from my carotid artery, and that could have been devastating. It could have been a completely different scenario than what I did face.
So the greatest gap that we have in our country today in disaster response, whether it's natural or man-made, is the long-term recovery.
I'm Andy Walsh. I'm a Deputy Chief with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'm responsible for the safety of the Las Vegas Strip and McCarran International Airport.
He not only was firing at the crowd, but then would go to the second window and was firing at the fuel tanks located at McCarran Airport.
So we have a public safety initiative that's a 3 to 5 year plan that'll keep our public safe.
The #1 goal of this public safety initiative is to bring healing and restoration to our own community right here in Las Vegas.
Is we have to have the long-term response, which requires having people in our community that understands trauma and understands how to heal trauma.
My name is Diana Reyes, and I am part of the Message of Faith, as well with the recap here in Las Vegas. What we do as first responders, when we get the call in, either it's if we have to go to a murder scene, if we have to go to a shooting, if we have to go to, like what just happened October 1st, wherever they send us, that's where we actually go and help the immediate need of the people.
What's very unique here in Las Vegas is the Violence Responder Program. The ability for volunteers, trained and vetted, ready to go out to respond to homicide, to shootings, to acts of violence like we saw on October 1.
My training came to life. It allowed me to be able to give that comfort during that very hard time for each individual that was there. It's always very difficult, never easy to let a mom know that they're not going to see their child again.
When we call them, they come. And they help us make sure that there is no further violent acts. They bring healing for the victims. They bring healing for neighborhoods and people who have been affected by violent crime.
Many of the gunshot wound victims that we do see are young, older teens, younger adults, senseless acts that are taking their lives. It happens daily and definitely should not be happening. And the ones that lose their life, usually, especially a young gentleman or a young female due to a senseless act, have their own young family at home that's now without a mother or father.
Just 2 days ago we had a drill and the teacher said if it's a real one, lock the doors, barricade the door with the desks. You have to stay away from the walls because he could shoot through the wall. Stay in the corners and hide. That's what you have to do.
In a community where there are many people who have already had trauma, when you add something like this that's so horrific and so violent on top of that, you then have PTSD and you have a long-term recovery.
It was just continuous noise, like there was never a break, whether it was people that needed help, whether it was the bullets that we were hearing, whether it was just the noise of everything, and helicopters and sirens and voices. And I just remember that when I left that place, that I was stepping over bodies. And there was one that I just can't forget. And there's parts of me that need to know if that person ever made it out. And then days later, when they start showing the pictures of the faces of those that didn't make it, I thought to myself, I think I recognize her.
There's no way our brain can wrap around, how do I cope and handle with this kind of overwhelming trauma? Because it's never happened this badly before.
When my physical injuries are over, I'm going to be healed. I'm going to be able to say, I went through it, and now I'm better. But that's not the reality.
We need to be able to articulate our pain, because when we keep it silent and suppressed, like mold, it grows insidiously and infects us. And that's what's the most toxic thing about the after effects of tragedy and trauma, is when we just try to sweep it under the rug, business as usual, oh, well, that'll never happen again, and go on. No, that's not going to work. That's not healthy. We know that from working with other trauma.
In a situation like this is that everybody's brains are hijacked and they stay on high alert for a long time, which then creates all kinds of physical and emotional and spiritual responses.
Probably about 10 days into it, that I had my first real nightmare. And it wasn't even logical. It didn't make any sense, because I knew that the shooter was dead. But yet he was in my dream and he was coming after me.
The closer you are and the more dangerous the event is, and the longer that you're in that danger, the more likely you are to develop post-traumatic stress disorder.
It sneaks in there in your day-to-day. Something will happen and you turn your head and you think, it could happen again.
When you understand what violence does to a person, it robs them of their safety, their security, their place of knowing that they're okay.
One of the greatest after effects of a tragedy like this is the helplessness that it leaves the average person with.
Again, remember, trauma likes to keep things secret. Trauma likes to keep you silent. It takes the joy out of you. It makes you feel like you're isolated.
I don't know how to do it on my own. I don't know where to reach. We've talked about it. There's no rule book, there's no handbook, there's no guide, there's no process set up, and we need that.
We don't heal automatically. It doesn't go away without help.
People's cell phones by this time in the evening were half dead or dying, trying to find where their loved ones were. Did they make it? What's going on? Calling their own family.
You saw it in their eye, you heard it in their voice, that need of prayer, please. Like a plea for help, it was a plea for prayer.
There are situations when you go up into that family retreat room and they're trying to reach their loved ones and it just rings and rings and rings, and come to find out they're not picking up because they're no longer with us.
So the second goal would be to have strength in unity, bringing together a crowdsourcing platform that democratizes the ability to participate, to express your feelings, to talk about solutions.
So crowdsourcing is a way for us to, get input and have the community get input from other community members who may not have access or time to come to events or come to meetings, but if they have an avenue where they can make a suggestion, then that's a great thing for us, because then you can tap into everybody. We have almost 2 million people that live here. Why not take as many ideas as you can, and sometimes a combination of ideas will be the thing that keeps us all safe.
Vice President Mike Pence will visit Las Vegas nearly a week after a gunman opened fire, killing 58 people.
5 days ago, America awoke to the news of the worst mass shooting in the history of the United States. On a field Not far from here, 58 people lost their lives and nearly 500 were injured. It was a tragedy of unimaginable proportions. We're joined together in sadness, shock, and grief for the fallen, the injured, and their families. Those we lost were taken before their time, but their names and their stories will forever be etched into the hearts of the American people. Among them, a policeman and a veteran, Charleston Hartfield. We do mourn with those who mourn and grieve with those who grieve, but we do not grieve like those who have no hope, because heroes give us hope. And I stand before you today on behalf of my family and every family in America to say we're with you. Today, we are all Vegas strong.
That influx of support, the outpouring of love, the cards, the flowers, those are all wonderful. But what we know about grief and human nature is this, that when the flowers die, and when the cards and calls and texts and emails quit coming, that's when people need other people the most.
It's critical that you have a roadmap in place that is clear and everyone coming together. Otherwise, this community will not heal. You will have a community that looks very different than the one that you have right now in the years to come.
Believe Again Las Vegas is that clearinghouse. It is that crowdsourcing platform where people come together to not only be helped, but have the ability to help others, to be able to give their input, to make their voices heard.
So in this initiative called Believe Again Las Vegas is something that we're behind. We want everybody to believe in our city. And if we've proven anything is that we're resilient, tough, and ready to move forward, but we also recognize it's going to take time.
It will require the entire community, stakeholders from every section and sector of this community coming together for long-term recovery to happen.
I think it's important for the community of Clark County to realize we use 17 separate medical facilities to accommodate the injuries.
I called my fiance. I said, I have blood all over me.
Right alongside our heroes of the police department, of the fire department, the people that were there risking their lives to protect us, right alongside with them, there were also these workers, the ones that were cleaning the bathrooms, the ones that were foreseeing the food lines.
Vegas was hit hard too in the workplace. Country music workplace, they were working. Vegas workplace, your casinos, your Uber drivers, your hotel housekeepers, concierges, the Las Vegas Strip. You can look at this as a workplace trauma.
You will see suicide rates increase, you'll see domestic violence increase, you will see people really deteriorating.
Think of it like secondhand smoke. Oftentimes we're warned that secondhand smoke is more devastating to the body than firsthand smoke. Secondary trauma is just as important to understand as firsthand trauma.
And what's even hardest about this, I think, is the impact and damage to children, because they're growing up in a very different world than adults did.
My teacher was actually there at the Route 91 concert when the shooting happened. So when she came to school, she was like crying.
So I was a New York City police officer for 6 years before I came here. I was a member of the NYPD. This is one of those events, you know, similar to like a 9/11 type tragedy where children are obviously exposed because of the media attention, because of it. It's just everywhere. But we have a responsibility to make sure moving forward that part of our recovery effort is to keep our children safe, but also to help them understand what's occurred.
Children are never designed to be traumatized. They're supposed to be protected and cared for.
In my third grade classroom, we had to have a lockdown because outside there was a man shooting a gun.
So when children are traumatized, not only do you have lots of research that's saying that those children are going to grow up and die younger and have all kinds of health issues, but you also have all kinds of problems such as their ability to connect in and have healthy relationships and develop healthy families.
It's not the child's fault again. Remember, it's us as adults that need to teach and train these kids what's going on with their body, what's going on with their mind, how are they processing, what's going on in their little hearts.
There was police cars outside and there was a helicopter. Some of the kids were panicked and some of them were screaming. One of the girls were really afraid. A lot of people were trying to help her stop crying so nobody would hear us, and then she kept on crying.
If we don't help kids understand what has happened and what violence does, you will see behavior acted out. You might see it at school, more aggression at school. You will see academics being affected. You will see higher rate of suicide because they don't know how to process all the pain that they're feeling inside.
Sometimes I worry if someone will go to my brother's classroom to hurt them. I have littler brothers and it might be a little harder for them to get away or something.
If you can't regulate emotions, then what do you do with anger and what do you do with helplessness and feeling out of control? You resort to violence.
We are a team as it relates to creating a safe school environment. Parents, students, law enforcement, and administrators.
There was a stabbing. I saw the blood. I saw about 200 kids screaming and just running.
And again, we're looking at this not because they're just little people. They're our future for tomorrow. So if we don't deal with the trauma in their little minds from 2 years old to 18, you fast forward that 10 years from now with a 28-year-old who's never processed an unresolved trauma, what are you going to be looking at?
I would want the grown-ups to help stop people trying to hurt other people.
We have to offer them the opportunity for healing now.
We've got to fight for the next generation. It is irresponsible to not fight for our children, for our sons and our daughters, for the most vulnerable among us.
A young girl asked me to help her find her fiance. She gave me his name, his date of birth. And remind you, we've seen over 100 people. I don't know where he could be. And I even asked, are you sure he's here? How did you get here? Her reply was, I rode in on the ambulance with him. How does that happen? How do you ride in with your loved one, but I can't find him? What happened was he had no ID. He was a John Doe. She finally then gives me a copy of his driver's license. Well, I make a copy of it, and I take it down to where the deceased victims were, with the coroners there, and pulled back sheets. I couldn't find him because there he was. I actually went to the crosses to go and pay my respects, and I looked solely for him and apologized. Out of all 58, I felt like I had this bond with this one kid that I've never met in my life. It's honestly kind of destroyed me a little bit. I don't even remember seeing him come in. What was I doing? Could we have saved him?
So there's no question that Las Vegas suffered a profound tragedy of horrific evil.
What Vegas has experienced, we're already seeing in other cities.
All right, welcome back. We're continuing to follow breaking news out of Texas. Multiple people have been shot at a church in Sutherland Springs, located east of San Antonio.
Unfortunately, I'm sad to tell you, to confirm, at least at this moment in time, there are 26 lives that have been lost.
In the past 36 days, a little bit over a month, we've had the shooting in Las Vegas and the shooting at Sutherland Springs.
It is going to take the church and the community both working together with a greater level of intentional love if we are going to see the city healed.
The church was there for us in many ways, whether it was food or whether it was water or whether it was time for prayer, and many people needed all those things and then some.
There was a spirit of giving. I mean, we had lines blocks long for people to donate blood. 90,000 people contributed financially to the Victims Fund to help folks. That was as people brought cases of water, plates of cookies, sandwiches they made to feed first responders and to feed survivors and families of victims. That was a spirit of giving and of love that was basically the world had never seen about Las Vegas. We knew it was there because we live here.
There's nothing more powerful than a police department that has the support of its community.
We invite you to believe with us, to believe together that as one, we can make our community stronger and we can make our community safer.
I think the strategy that it's going to require to bring not just healing to Vegas, but to the U.S. as a whole, it's going to require a personal response.
I think what few people really understand is that the real challenges begin after the initial response.
We need your help to find solutions. Your opinion is extremely important to us. Your suggestions are important. Your ideas are important. We need to work together to find answers and hopefully find solutions. Together, we can solve the challenges that are facing us. We ask you to be part of our crowdsourcing endeavor. Let your voices be heard. This is an opportunity to make our community safer.
Do we have to get involved to make a difference? Yeah, we do. Is there a risk in doing that? Always. But I think the risks of not doing that are greater.
Yes, the young people of today can be part of the solution, and they need to be part of the solution because they're going to be the adults of tomorrow.
And we need to encourage the public to participate. I mean, people need an opportunity. Sometimes they don't have a voice and they're not encouraged and they're, in fact, discouraged. But we encourage everybody to have the opportunity to participate in the discussion and the solutions. And the community has to heal as one. The body heals as one. The community has to heal as one. If one of our members are suffering, we're all suffering. So we ask you to work with us.
And I do want to be a part of the process. I do want to help those when they're ready and able. And in this clearinghouse and in this 3 to 5 year plan, I hope it reaches everybody so that they can feel the same way I do, that there's hope and there will be a process and there will be help along the way so that each and every one will feel the support of this community and of Las Vegas.
The wonderful city that this is, the great business that happens every day here, legitimate, fantastic, strong business people are working hard every day to build a wonderful city. There are children growing up in the schools here, and the city is high profile for its entertainment and for many things. And I would love to see, and I'm anxious to see, how it evolves into even a much greater city. Known for even greater things.
I believe we're going to be able to keep people safe moving forward. We're all working every minute of every day to protect everybody, locals and tourists alike.
Love is the only power that can change our society, our city, and our state, and our country.
We need your participation. Be part of this historic public safety initiative. Be part of the 3 to 5 year plan. Let your voice be heard. Make your suggestions. Come up with the solutions that are going to keep us safer, healthier, that's going to cause our city to prosper. We have to stand up against the evil and the violence that we've experienced.
But I believe as a community, if we come together, we might be able to reduce the amount of violence that is coming towards us.